This is the Biblically Centered podcast.
Hello.
Biblically Centered equips your family with knowledge and conversations for you to live and defend your Christian faith.
Nice.
And this is episode number 18 of
Number
our
18.
podcast.
Yes, it is.
It's very, very exciting.
Good job saying our mission statement there.
Thank you.
I normally say that, but you took over today.
I did.
And you did a great job. Thank you.
I feel like I need to carry a little bit more weight in this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of weight, why don't you tell them about our email list?
Perfect. Well, if you have not checked out biblicallycentered.com, that is a great place to find out more information about what our mission is with this business. And we have all the latest podcast episodes listed there. We also have blog posts and kind of summaries of the podcast. So if you like what's in the podcast, but have someone that you know isn't going to listen for 25 to 30 minutes, or if you yourself just want to recap during the week, feel free to head there. You can read those and you can sign up for our emails, and then you'll be alerted of when we have new episodes and exciting things coming soon.
Yeah. Email list is a good thing. Yeah. As we continue to roll stuff out, there's going to be some exciting opportunities there for those on the email list.
Everyone informed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sign up there.
Yeah.
But today we have already progressed to our fourth category.
Oh my goodness.
So again, this is broken down into 6 categories.
Yes.
And today we're entering into our fourth category, which is
attitudes. Everyone's favorite thing to talk about.
That's right. So this covers virtues number 13 through 16.
Yes. So we're going to cover things like joy, hope, encouragement, all those things that really are sort of outward signs of our inward change. And so just to kind of recap, our first category was on authority, so God's position in his life. And then our second category was on relationships. And then our third was on choices. And so now we're on attitudes. And so once you have all the previous ones well defined, then these just continue building on and building on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
All right. So the majority of our attitudes category encapsulates the fruit of the Spirit. So if you've heard a few of them here and there, but now this is kind of the section that they're really going to populate. And these are not individually isolated, and they frequently overlap one another. So as we go through the next few weeks over these 4 virtues that are in this category, you'll see that they really can intertwine, and but we've tried to make them as distinct as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are, again, an outward expression of what is in one's heart.
Because in Matthew 12:34 says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Yeah. So that's a very important verse for this category, because obviously we know that our attitude affects our actions, and all that comes down to our heart. Yeah. So we want to make sure when we're having these conversations with our children that we're addressing the heart.
Yeah. And I think we can also look back on our last category being choices, because again, like we just said, our behaviors come from our attitudes, but then choices almost come before that. We're going to make choices ahead of time, that we will be forgiving with people, that we will be encouraging them. Like there are choices that we're already going to have established, and so that will affect these attitudes, which will then affect our behavior. So they're kind of all working, again, together. And I think we've also said, like, there are 24 virtues, and we had to limit the number somewhere. So, and we have young kids, and I would say that this category is probably the main one we're struggling with at the moment. And I think a lot of the times
we're training in this
area.
We're
training, yes. And I would just say that until your child has made that true commitment in their heart to give their life to the Lord, it is kind of a struggle up until that point. I mean, it can be a struggle at that point too. But anyways, yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. But it's a struggle.
Oh,
it's
you're
a
off the
struggle
script,
for
so I
us.
was like, all right, we're gonna see where this goes.
Sorry. Okay. Yes. So once the previous categories are established, then these attitudes will naturally flow out of them towards other people. And so Ephesians 4:1-3 says, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And so a continual practice of these virtues will eventually make them second nature.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would say in my life, you just kind of have to keep coming back to these. And that's why we're repeating them over and over with ourselves, with our children, so that it's not just like, oh, I did it one and done, but they are continual. You're going to find more levels of patience that you need to work out. You'll find more levels of joy and hope that you need to show unto other people. And so it's just, I think we've said this like before, it's a drip by drip method.
Right.
Not only for our children, but also with ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said before, I mean, attitudes, it's an overflow of the heart. And so we always want to make sure we're addressing the heart, but also giving your kids the resources, because there are times that they have to make a choice. Like, and I guess I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, but like even for myself, it's nice, even with some of this stuff that we've created, it's nice having this as a reference point to fall back to, if that makes sense. And that's what we're wanting to establish for our kids, so that if they're faced with anything that's contrary to these virtues that we have continually taught our kids, that they'll have this material instilled in them to rely on.
Yes.
So
and I would also correspond that or relate that to, like, what are the little mantras or little jingles per se in your head that, you know, your parents always whipped off to you, or that, you know, like patience is a virtue, or slow and steady, you know, these little things that maybe you never really knew what they were about, but they were just said a million times. That's kind of the point of these 24 virtues, is you're going to say them so many times and refer to them and point to them so many times that will just be your kid's default of like, oh, patience. What was that about again? Oh, yeah, that was about patience. Oh, peace. Oh, that was that. Gentleness. Oh, yeah. And then that will just be their programming of how they are thinking about these things. So they're thinking about kindness and gentleness in regards to how God created people. And because that's, you know, that's very close to one of the phrasings of one of these virtues. And so we're just trying to set those default settings, I guess, to help them. And to help ourselves.
And I think it gives a little bit of ownership to the kids too, because I think we all have that innate desire to be like a part of something. And so for us, this is the ability to give kids ownership into our family.
Yeah.
And that's why anytime we reference these virtues with our kids, it's always like, this is what our family believes, and you're in our family, and this is this is how we live, this is how we act. Yeah. And I think it really does help give them a little of buy-in and feel like this is something special amongst our family.
Yeah, for sure.
Even though we want it obviously to be broader than that, but.
Yeah. And so also just a thought about these virtues in particular, they might be the only testimony that some people will see of your relationship with Christ. And so it's important in today's culture that the world sees something that is truly different. And so, you know, I know that's true in a workplace or in other environments where you are. The only thing that they might see might be your work ethic, so that might be our works category, but ultimately it's probably going to just be your attitudes category. Like, are you joyful in situations? Do you have patience with people? Are you gentle with your response? And people are going to, like, they're going to notice. And so I think that's what we're trying to get our children, like, we are different, and there are bigger reasons for that. And so a lot of these, like, we have joy and hope in what Christ has done. You know, our hope is bigger than just like, we have joy because it's a sunshiny day. It's like, no, we have joy because, like, we have ultimate hope in Christ.
Right. Well, and that's where, I mean, the simple teaching of like the way that the world knows the mark of a Christian is by our love.
Yeah.
But understanding that our definition of love, like we've discussed, is different than the world's.
Yeah,
It has to be truthful love.
Yeah.
But again, in our attitudes, are we showing that in our attitudes, or are we constantly grumbling and pointing out all the wrongdoings of everyone else on our social media platforms, etc., and not? Are we not responding to our children correctly? Are we not interacting? Anyways.
Yeah. And so just to talk about some of the virtues that are going to be in this category. Joy is something that only Christians can have with confidence, as is the same with hope. That's like true joy, true hope. Those are things that are only truly rooted in Christ and the work that he's done. And our peace is not one that shies back, but remains steady despite any circumstance, because our confidence is in Christ working on our behalf. So it's a peace that is truly a peace that passes all understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then in recognition of God's creation, we treat all people with dignity through kindness and patience. So that's kind of the ones that we'll be going into in the next episodes.
Yeah, joy will be a fun one.
Yeah.
I have some commentary on it, but I'm going to save it for the episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Little teaser.
Tune back in for that. And so with a lot of these things, we have to be proactive with our conversations. And so these are conversations that your children will remember, and not the conversations after they've made a mistake. And so what I mean by that is, like, in the moment of an attitude response from them that isn't appreciated or isn't what they should have done, really kind of the moment's already gone. I mean, you can speak to their heart and pray with them and, let them know that that's not the correct response.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the talk surrounding these attitudes is going to be best when it's proactive. So when it's done ahead of time, of like, hey, or I guess in retrospect. So, hey, do you remember yesterday when this happened? What would be a better way?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times it's about finding the right opportunity or situation to discuss it beforehand. So give them tools before they're in that situation, or talk about it after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know our kids are young, but we do speak a lot to, obviously taking into account the fact that their minds and brains aren't fully developed. We know that, but also not, and I've probably mentioned this before, but not necessarily allowing that to be an excuse to not communicate to them on a deeper level, and making sure that they are aware that just because you feel something doesn't mean that's how you have to respond.
Right.
So if you're feeling disappointed, we'll take TV, that we didn't allow you to watch TV today, or didn't allow you to watch that show you wanted to watch, whatever it is, that just because you feel disappointed doesn't mean that your attitude needs to reflect that.
Yeah.
Because that is showing us an issue of something deeper.
Right.
So, and like for us, and I don't know what affects kids on that stuff. We'll let our kids watch certain shows, but we've noticed that there are certain shows, I don't know if other parents listen to this, that there's certain shows that would affect the kids differently.
Oh, yeah.
Like Daniel Tiger is an example of one.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because it seemed like a, good show.
They were teaching decent
lessons and stuff, and it was, based around Mr. Rogers. But there was just, for some reason, that it would always cause meltdowns whenever.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was something as simple as the frame rate and the way that their brains were. I don't know. But feel free, parents, to take ownership of your TV. You don't have to let your kids watch whatever they want.
Yes. Well, and that goes into, like, we have to seek out the things that are affecting their attitudes. So are you always in the same argument every week about the same thing? Then maybe see, like, again, you want to help them work through these things, but you also don't want to just, like, okay, I know that Fridays after a long week of school, they're always in a meltdown mode. So is that when I'm going to press them about this or that? It's like, maybe Friday afternoons and evenings should just be like pizza and a movie. Let's not talk about it, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of feel out your rhythm and your routines and see where are those pain points. Is it always after they play a game, or is it after they do this, or is it before they do this, or is it when they eat this? You know, I mean, there are so many things that go into this, but I think just being cognizant of what is causing that behavior if it's not, or what is causing that behavior if it's happening frequently, you know. And again, like you said, not letting them off the hook, but if it's a continued rhythm, then it's like, maybe I should try to pinpoint something. Because, you don't want your kids to be constantly grumpy or mean, and it's something that could be limited or helped. Yeah.
And we always just reiterate to our kids, and this is something that they can quote, that they're in charge of their attitudes. Yeah. It's not me and mommy who's in charge of your attitude. It's not your brother and sister who's in charge of your attitudes. It's you. Yeah. So you have to take some ownership in that.
Yeah. And so Philippians 1:27 says, "Only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel." And so obviously that was Paul who wrote that, I believe, to Timothy. And so he's saying, whether I come or not, I want to hear the good things that are coming out of that. So I want to hear about your great attitude in these situations. And that kind of goes back to the beginning of sometimes people, the only instance of Christ they're going to get is when you're kind to them in the supermarket or at work, or, you know, you just never know
or when
what
you cut them off in traffic with your church's bumper sticker.
Yeah, don't do that. But, you know, I mean, really just think about, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and the little things. But if you see your whole life as a display of Christ, then I think that allows you to purposefully and intentionally slow down and look for opportunities. And so I think that your attitude can be a real light to Christ. Yeah. And I think just recognizing that, I don't know. I think a lot of times maybe people are like, oh, I feel like I have to do this big, grandiose thing, or my testimony is going to be this or that or this. And it's like, your testimony could just be having a smile on your face every time that you talk to that cashier who seems that they're, you know, mad at the world or something. And, you know, people will recognize that. So yeah, I think just think about those small moments really do make a ripple effect. Yeah. And when we think of the ultimate of maintaining a good attitude, Jesus maintained a absolute perfect attitude. And so that's always just kind of good to.
And I think it's important to note that because Jesus got angry.
He did. Yeah.
And so there's a place for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously the anger that he felt, was a righteous anger.
Yeah.
And it was because he was grieving what these people, the fact that people, well, how do I explain that? How do you say that?
I mean, in the temple. Yeah.
He's grieving that obviously that they turned the house of the Lord into a marketplace.
Yeah.
That these people were making.
They were making it harder for people to come worship God.
Yeah. And I just got tongue-tied there. But the point being is that the anger that he had is a righteous anger. And that's what we want for ourselves and for our kids, is that when you feel anger, you want it to be in that way that you can. I don't know how to explain that. It's a tough one, but essentially to where you can direct it. It's almost like you're refocusing your anger into a way that pleases God. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna. I mean, I know anger is the vice for. I would have to relook up that virtue. So yes, obviously anger can be acceptable, but as children. That might be rare for them.
For them to have acceptable anger.
Yeah. But to just read about Christ and say, what was his attitude in this situation? What would my attitude have been? Would I have been really annoyed by the disciples? Would I have been really frustrated with them or really overwhelmed? And to just think about, like, again, Jesus treated every interaction as an opportunity to share God, you know, to bring about the fulfillment of the covenant and to show, you know, the ultimate love that God does have for us within those, you know, the laws that he had set. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Well, and sorry, I'm trying to reiterate my point on the anger, on the anger thing, because or try to illustrate it better. Because like for me, it's like if I have a friend who, is a Jesus follower, and you know that like God wants to do something through them and through them, like he does all of us, but they just make decision after decision that in the wrong direction. And so you know that they're living in a way that's not allowing them to live the best life that God could have for them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel this sense of anger, of just wishing that they could get it.
Right. So I guess yes. So it's not more so directed at them. It's surrounding the circumstances and situations, kind of? Or it is at them? Or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I muddied the waters.
I don't know.
It's from a good place, though.
Yes. It is. You want me to... I'm going to keep going.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Oh, okay. 1 Peter 2:23. So this is about Christ, who, when he was reviled. Oh my gosh. Yeah, reviled. Okay. Who, when he was reviled, did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously. So, yeah, so he obviously maintained a good attitude within that. And ultimately, it says, committed himself to the one who judges righteously. So ultimately, he committed the outcome to God, which we know is the only one who can execute true and right justice.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. To end, can I end? Or do you want to end with that verse?
I'll do this first.
Okay.
In Ephesians. In Ephesians 4:23-24, it says, "Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitudes. Put on your new nature, created to be like God, truly righteous and holy."
Yeah.
And I love that verse too, because, and this is a constant reminder for me, especially when it comes to our attitudes, is like prayer is powerful. And I mean, numerous times of me feeling a certain way and then just taking a few seconds to pray, focus on Christ, ask for his strength, and then he gives it. He delivers that. I mean, and where we feel weak is where he has made himself strong in us. And so I think that's an important thing for our kids to understand too. Whenever they're feeling the things that they feel, is like prayer is powerful. You can come to God at any point and ask that he renew your mind, renew your spirit, and it kind of gives you that fresh start, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had to do that with our daughter. I mean, I was praying before, sometimes, you know, when it came to their attitudes or things, but with her, it's made a big difference. Like when she is having a pretty sassy attitude or just a hard time listening, or praying and asking for the fruit of the Spirit to be evident in her life really does change her attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes, again, I maybe use that retroactively, like after the fact or after an hour or two of being frustrated. And then I'm like, oh, like we just need to pray. And so that's just a reminder for myself in this episode. Like I need to be proactive with that at the first sign. Be like, you know what, we're going to pray about this. Because yeah, like you said, renewing your mind and really just getting your heart focused on Christ can make all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and letting them know that that's where our strength comes from is really good.
Yep.
So,
all right, let's wrap her up.
all right. Well, thank you for joining us. This was attitudes, our fourth category, again, which is going to encapsulate. No,
Encapsulate.
whatever. It's going to contain. There we go.
Well, what you try to say?
13.
How do you say that word?
No, I don't want to. Virtues 13 through 16. Moving on. I have some Southern twang that comes out every now and again.
Is that what it is?
Virtues. Yeah, that's what that is.
I don't think that's how Southern people say that word.
Okay. Well, good grief. Whatever. Virtues number 13 through 16 of 24. Stop. Okay. Would you like to plug where they can find out more information and sign up for our newsletter?
Our emails, biblicallycentered.com.
Yes.
Lots of good things on there. We hit it in the beginning of the episode. Great. We got our podcast on there.
Yep.
There's blogs on there. As we get closer and closer to this stuff being available readily, it's going to be on there. And sign up for our email list, please, because we are going to do a good job communicating out effectively as things are becoming available and things that we feel like you need to know. So do it.
And share it.
Yeah.
Like if you've liked an episode, we would appreciate it if
we
you
would
let other people know. And again, if you think a podcast episode is too long, just share them the little recap, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or listen to it at 1.5 speed.
Or do that. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.